Today we have a very special podcast episode. We're going to be covering a lot of therapeutic and self-development themed techniques and topics, some of which I'm willing to bet you haven't heard before, that just kind of take things from a different angle. We typically hear the tactical tips in personal development, like turn off blue light on your TV screen or journal a lot. And I think there's an oversaturation of that. I want to kind of cover some of the emotional self-development that you can do, because frankly speaking, I think a lot of the times you can get only so far and on a surface level with some of that. And when you really get down to the cases where someone's not making progress in their life, I think it's usually more deep on some psychological block that's happening. And so I'm not claiming you can solve everything, because some of them have really, deep knots to untie. But I do think that we can make some progress here and at least get to a better understanding of the core issues at hand. And I would argue you probably make some more progress through some of the techniques and at least concepts I discuss here, rather than, staying on the tactical stuff. And by the way, some of that tactical stuff, a lot of it's more pseudoscience than science-backed. For example, I think just yesterday I posted an article on my blog about how the whole blue light blocking thing for better sleep has been debunked, which is crazy because I've been using night shift on my iPhone and Flux on my computer for years and years, and people have been asking me about it, and more people are starting to come into that fold. But recent studies have shown that whole idea of blue light being better or worse is completely off, which is completely changed things for me. So just goes to show you what tactics can get you, sometimes not that far. So I actually, after learning all that, I've turned off night shift on my phone just to see if there's any foreseeable difference. If not, I'm like, wow, that was a waste of time. And just because there's people selling you stuff on something doesn't mean it is effective either. There's a whole business built on blue light blocking glasses. So let's get into the emotional stuff. I think the one thing I want to start with is your belief systems. I think throughout life, we naturally develop belief systems. These can be anything from religious belief systems as just beliefs about physics. For example, you're probably sitting down on a chair right now listening to this, or maybe you're, exercising or whatnot. But if you are sitting on a chair, you're probably believing that chair will hold you when you sit, and that gravity won't go haywire, and it's all constantly pulling us all down. So even something as simple as a chair has a number of beliefs to it on how it will hold and support you, how it will crumble, and how it responds and will respond in the future based off past experiences. And so with a lot of these beliefs, sometimes they're shaped by culture, life, family, friends. It's essentially your environment. And fortunately, that creates a lot of emotional attachments, reactions, and feelings that go beyond logic. I mean, you could be super smart and have a Harvard degree, but all the rational reasoning you do isn't really going to pierce through that. For me, for example, I am an overanalyzer, rationalizer for sure. So sometimes I tend to do that, overanalyze, but ultimately that doesn't address an emotional issue that's blocking you from achieving your goal. For example, I think a lot of people have goals who are listening to this podcast, who've written to me and they're like, hey, I'd like how you started a following. How do I start my own following? And some people, they have very light beliefs or emotions that hold them back. Some have more deeper beliefs that hold them back. For example, I sometimes when I coach a couple of them through it, Some are quick to get on it, create blog posts or create content on YouTube or whatnot to generate views and build a following. Others are slow to do that. You follow up with them and they haven't done it as many times as they should have, or life got in the way. So you have to uncover like what's holding them back. And sometimes part of it is beliefs about how the world works, culture, how it functions. So that belief can be as simple as, this is nice to have, and this is how I do it, and I think I should do it, but it's not that fun. It's not that enjoyable. And so that belief, which is based off their experience, can affect things and hold them back from creating that content. So you can sometimes easily untangle that by trying to make it fun, or, in some cases, they just don't want to do it because turns out building a following is just not as enjoyable, something that they're willing to do as they wanted to. I mean, something can be not fun, and some people will still push through it because they want it really bad. They believe that it's worth the pain. And so that's where this whole concept of limiting beliefs in self-help comes from, where a belief that doesn't serve you is holding you back, or sometimes a belief that isn't true. And one mental model I want to bring to you is this idea of, is it effective or ineffective? You see, whether or not something's true or false, that's another thing, but is that serving you or not serving you? Let's start there. Let's throw away that example I gave you about creating a following. I know a lot of you don't want to create a following, and they just want to live a better life, a richer, happier, healthier, more successful life. Now, to do that, sometimes we have beliefs that get in our way, and whether or not they are true or not, we start by asking, are they effective or ineffective? Are they serving you or holding you back? And so think about this, a lot of people struggle with marriage, for example, finding love. And one belief that may hold them back is, clock is ticking, I'm an old woman now, I'm 25, I'm old. I've heard that before. And that belief, and once again, we're putting aside for now whether that's true or not, because that doesn't matter. It's not serving them. It's ineffective because in some cases, it can cause a lot of depression, stress, angst, desperation. It can cause just negative thoughts, low self-esteem, anger, frustration, a number of possible emotions, just depending on the person and their personality. It can manifest in many ways, but it can really just bring you down, and it can make someone think, oh, I'm 31, I'm 42, I'm 25. I feel bad because I'm past my prime. My love life hasn't worked out. Whatever it is, replace love life with my career isn't where it should be. I mean, how many times have you seen some rich young kid on social media? I mean, I see it every day. I stumble across a new one almost every other day. And you could start to think, wow, like things really pass me by. I mean, I've definitely been there where you're like, man, I always thought I would be like that guy. Multi-millionaire, rich, famous influencer like Jake Paul by this age, or, replace Jake Paul with any placeholder influencer. You get the point. And you're not. And so you have to first identify that this is an ineffective belief because it's not serving you. What's the result of it? You get depressed, unhappy, sad, you glum about, you feel bad about yourself. Maybe you bring that negativity towards others. it's really not serving you to move towards your goal, or at least feel happy or feel more pleasant. And so that's really not helping you. It's probably pushing you further away from those goals in the first place, because you're probably seen as less attractive. You probably have less energy and whatnot. And then it's also just making you feel terrible. So I think that's the first thing to consider. People have, and this can be applied to many things. People have religious beliefs as well about life after death, or once you die, that's it. So you have the scientist perspective with Neil deGrasse Tyson, and then the religious perspective by the Pope. And so the point is, we have all these beliefs and concepts about how the world works or should work, or how you think it works. And then you have to assess if they are ineffective or effective. And this can apply to not just, dealing with beliefs that are making you feel down in your pursuit of goals. Because I think that happens a lot as we pursue certain things like more money, a career, status, a life situation that you thought would manifest by a certain time, but it didn't in many areas of your life. You can feel down or like you're not there. That's when you start to first question if they're effective or ineffective. And then if they're ineffective, you have to take that further and see what you can do to actually change these emotional beliefs to something that's actually serving you. Now, as something like religion, it can't be proved or disproven whether there's eternal life after. I mean, some would argue you can prove it. That's debatable. But the point is, some people get very down about it when they realize, oh, this is the end. Some people get very motivated. But if you're catching the fact that you're getting a non-productive response, let's say you just feel like life's passing me by. Oh, the time is the end of my life is happening. I haven't accomplished what I wanted to. Oh, woe is me. That's not serving you. So you have to catch that thought. That's the first thing. Check if it's effective, empowering you or not. Recognize, your emotions. Slow down, take some short breaths, and then, question it and see if you can find a mindset, a belief system that better serves you. Now, if it's already serving you well, then maybe you don't have to do this. But oftentimes we do have these negative emotions that are really not serving us. It's usually you see it in the emotion or you see it in the results you're having. Sometimes the results you are experiencing in life can be another sign that maybe it's a time to pivot approaches. So think about that. Some people, they're like, oh yeah, like Gary Vaynerchuk or Neil deGrasse Tyson will be like, life is short. That's why we have to make the most of it. You only get one life. And they're very empowered by that. But others get very sad about that, nihilistic. And so if it's not serving you, you got to twist it, turn it. And I'm not saying you be delusional. That's definitely counter to my line of thought and how I think is the best way of dealing with things. There are people who will kind of twist things to a delusional standpoint. I heard this one story by Charlie Munger where he discovered this person he knew who found out her son died from a plane accident, and rather than accepting that truth, the truth was too hard to bear. So she just invented this thing in her mind where she just kept telling people, "Oh, my son is away on vacation." And his point was that we all do this to an extent where we twist our minds because of a truth that's too hard to bear. I'm not saying you have to go crazy with that. I'm just saying if it's not serving you, then why have that thought? It's a very kind of stoicism philosophy. And I'm definitely someone who's scientific, so I think, definitely don't twist it so far as to that. Women, I like to accept reality for what it is, and we already all all of us to an extent will twist our minds to take in things that are a bit unbearable. But I think what you can do is find a accurate, helpful thought rather than something that is clearly not serving you and may not be even accurate to begin with. So, for example, this whole idea that, oh, life is over, I'm 25 years old, you really have to question that thought. And I mean, you can use statistics, numbers for this if that is convincing for you. Other people are more convinced by story or anecdote. For me, I gravitate more towards the numbers, being that analytical, rational kind of person, but to each their own. Some people like how Gary Vaynerchuk yells at them on social media or on a stage and says, you're just getting started. 30 is the new 20 or 40 is the new 20. And then they'll say, you have another 60 years. And in his mind, like everyone's going to live to 100. That's his whole thought. And so a lot of people get very energized by his matter-of-fact, swearing way of just shocking people out of the system. I kind of was convinced, but I also was like, do we really? I actually got called out in a podcast interview. I was on someone else's podcast as a guest. I used Gary's quote, and the interviewer, he was kind of new to interviewing, so I don't blame him, but I think it was kind of a random call out. Dude, bro, you didn't have to put me on blast, but he was just like, really? Do we really live till 90? I thought it was much younger. So he kind of called me out on there, and then afterwards I did actually look up the average expected life expectancy in the U.S. at least. I mean, it's probably longer in other countries, but it's roughly 77.28 years, and I think it's higher for women than men. So it's usually 79 for women, 73 for men. So let's say you're 30 now, you may still have another 43 years. Maybe 10 of those years you are decrepit and too old to work. But that's still a good 30 years. And if you're lucky, you could be like Charlie Munger and Warren Buffett. They're one's 100, the other's like in his 90s. So if you're really lucky, you could be someone like that. Point being, 30, 40 years, it isn't necessarily a ton of time. However, it is still a substantial time to make the most of your life. As Logan Paul and other philosophers say, life isn't short. It's you just got to do more. He definitely wasn't the first to say that, but I think he popularized it. I think there's definitely been some philosophers who have said the same thing before. I think Seneca said it. It is not that we have a short space of time, but that we waste too much of it. Life is long enough and has been given in sufficiently generous measure to allow the accomplishment of the very greatest things if the whole of it is well invested. So, to each their own. Do you believe that? Do you not? Once again, all back to belief systems. So, you have your belief systems now. Now you have is this serving you? Is this effective? Frankly, for me, 30, 40 years, I think, is a decent amount of time. It's not a ton. It's still kind of impending, but one can still get a lot done during that time. It's scary, but also it's something that is more time than you think. You know, we're not going to drop dead anytime soon, hopefully. And so you have your ability to apply something that is more effective, maybe more accurate, more helpful, more effective. Like even in a worst case, let's say you're someone who is 63 and let's say genetically speaking, all your parents, grandparents died at 70. So chances are you may only have 8 years left. That said, if you look at Stoicism, Seneca's work, philosophers, or even religious texts, or just effective self-development tips, you can either moan or bemoan that fact, get sad about it, feel glum, or you can make the most of it. You can be as effective as you can, appreciate the time you have and make the most of it, and feel better rather than afflict your mind with negative thoughts that just bring you down further. And now, of course, it's easier said than done. And then, of course, there's all the effects of culture and the influence of culture that's pushing us down to make this much more difficult. But I think we can fight through it. I think we can define our own belief systems and life philosophy rather than rely on, what the world tells us or how our reptilian brain makes us think. So let me give you another technique and example of how this really all comes to play. So another thing is this whole idea of not just building a following or accomplishing a certain thing by a certain age, and then when that time passes and you still haven't accomplished it, and dealing with those negative thoughts, but also just your interactions with other people, your thoughts, your ideas, everything has a effect on how you come across. Think about it. Whether you're working from home or you're a public speaker, you are communicating with other people. It's going to be through Zoom, maybe it's through public speeches, maybe it's through one-on-one office hours with your subordinates as a manager. Communication is a huge part of succeeding. Even if you're a online influencer, you're communicating on some level with your audience. And a lot of that sub-communication pushes through and conveys all sorts of things that can positively or non-productively push you further or away from your goals. For example, self-esteem, confidence. All these things aren't just things that you can really fake it and make it. Maybe to a degree, but generally speaking, I found in my personal experimentations and with observing many others, some of that substantial increase in confident body language, increased status, self-love, self-esteem, all that stuff, if you don't have it, requires deep inner work to work on. And then when they try and just simulate the body language of a successful person, oftentimes, sometimes they'll get away with it, but oftentimes they'll get some small detail wrong, whether it's their tone, facial expressions, arm movements, foot movements, posture, vocal tone, vocal variety, vocal pitch, speed of repetition. There's all these different factors that just don't line up. And so, yes, I think there's plenty you can do to work on that from a tactical, technical standpoint that works. There's exercises I've tried when I've done public speaking. I did public speaking recently, earlier this year, for my full-time job. This podcasting's just a side hobby, but I'm a full-time job, corporate job, and did a TED Talk in front of the whole company of about 200. And there are tactical tips you can use to improve your manner of speech, your eye contact, and so forth. However, depending on the person, if it's a severe enough issue, you need to correct the inner monologue, the inner dialogue, which comes from belief systems, your childhood, your inner traumas and whatnot, in order to really see those effects and so forth. So I'm not saying, you can't just use this exercise to remove the ums and ahs from your public speaking repertoire and improve your speaking. You can't. And I'm not also saying, everyone has these deep inner traumas that take a long, intensive time to heal. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying it's worth touching and focusing a bit more on the inner game, the inner self, and fixing that. And by doing that, a lot of the outer techniques, outer body language will sometimes autocorrect. So, for example, I'll give you a couple. One would be, so one example I have is sometimes I'll get like negative thoughts about people I met. You know, maybe it was like a person I got along with for a while, and then one day he's kind of distant to me, and then I think, well, man, maybe he doesn't like me anymore. And when in reality, maybe this guy was just busy or feeling distracted that day and whatnot. And so that's been a habit that I've had to break out of. And that comes from kind of this whole idea of questioning my thoughts, checking and assessing for accuracy, and really checking myself for catastrophizing or trying to predict the future or jumping to conclusions that are all or nothing without really assessing the situation. Some of that probably comes from not having as many friends as others growing up, and certain experiences when I was younger with that inner child, inner self. So just being able to talk about it, work with your inner child, do one of those guided inner child meditations, those self-love meditations, has helped me not jump to conclusions, question those, bring it up if it's an issue with a coworker or someone I know, or a big enough issue, and to just question those thoughts rather than just have those random negative thoughts from the past that still harm me to this day or just get brought up. Now, for you, you may not have those negative thoughts for this random person you've interacted with, but you may have thoughts that hold you back from achieving everything you want to achieve in life and living a good life. Going back to one big motivation from some of our listeners, they want to do well in school, get good grades so that they can get a good job and make a lot of money one day. Pretty standard stuff, but still very common and important to many people. Now, they may have random negative thoughts or belief systems around, and they don't have to be traumatic or deep. They could be, but just surface level stuff sometimes that still require deeper inner digging from an emotional or psychological standpoint. This one book I'm reading called Willpower Doesn't Work by Ben Hardy slightly covers this. He comes at it more so from the angle of environment, how your environment growing up has made an impact on you. So he says, your actions, beliefs, habits, the things that have been stopping you from just changing your life can't be fixed with just willpower. That's why his book's titled Willpower Doesn't Work. He says you need to really take a look at your environment and see what's changing. He says your actions, your habits, your beliefs, opinions, all come from the environment you were placed in as you grew up. I mean, it didn't just come out of a vacuum. And therefore, he's arguing that you really need to make a thoughtful change of your environment to start reshaping your political beliefs, your opinions, your belief systems about how the world works. And so there's countless belief systems that obstruct you in every area of life. Since we're talking about the money example now, I'll just pull out a few. I'm sure you can just Google a list of like 100 personal finance or money limiting beliefs if you wanted to. But a couple that come to mind are rich people are evil, rich people are greedy, all rich people don't donate to charity. And you may have got these random beliefs that are not true based on Uncle Bob or Aunt May telling you these things based off their own opinion because they saw this one rich guy who would never donate. But when you actually look at the statistics and numbers, wealthy people donate more to charity than any other group. And so one way of questioning it is with data statistics. That can work for me, but once again, that's not the only way. I think the first thing is awareness of these belief systems and how they're affecting you. Second is a tactic of reorienting yourself and addressing them. And so I want to bring that to you. There's a lot of cognitive biases and issues that come to mind that obstruct us from getting rid of these. The main issue at hand is that most people, the common public, they have egos, and the ego always wants to be right, even if they're not really right. They find ways, inventive ways of always being right. And so because of that, it's hard to block a belief system, especially if an organization, a person, maybe yourself, has convinced you to invest a lot of your resources in a belief system. Now, this could be something like Scientology, which is a cult that like convinced people to basically invest sometimes their family members into that organization, and apparently they all get like locked away. Like if you leave the cult, you can't see other members of your family again because they lock you into that shelter, the communities that they live in. Or to a tamer degree, another example would be something like crypto. So with cryptocurrency, a lot of people make investments of their own life savings into a coin. I've seen this all the time, where I would say one slightly innocuous, innocent, but pointed comment saying that, okay, this crypto is trash, or Bitcoin is not going to make you all rich. And some random group of people off YouTube or TikTok or Twitter who saw that will just react in such an angry, mean way. It's clearly a very emotional reaction. And you're like, why would someone write an essay on such a quick comment? Well, it's because they are so emotionally invested in it. They've put so much of their life savings that if it doesn't go right, it'll go really wrong, that they are dumb on the macro, smart on the micro. And what I mean by that is they've made a dumb choice by investing such a risky amount in something that may go south, and they're being smart by trying to just use their massive brain power, which is just to rationalize why this thing will work. And they're just hyper-focused on the reasons it won't. And they're not operating like a scientist would, which is you want to seek out all the rational possible reasons it couldn't work to make sure your decision is accurate. And so, I mean, that's a great example, but, a lot of emotional investing and things like that happen in many fields, not just crypto, with everything. I mean, even with the language of the area of love and relationships. I mean, some people they have this belief system that only rich people can succeed with women. And it's so bad that they've locked it in so much that if you try and show them examples that, hey, these people aren't rich and they were able to score a woman or a successful woman or whatnot, the only way they can cope with that refuting evidence is they engage their brain power to rationalize something really convoluted to continue to complete that belief cycle. So they may say like, oh, well, maybe he's secretly rich and he just doesn't show it, and he got rich off crypto and it's not showing, so my Bitcoin portfolio will take off. So yeah, that's the only reason that person who looks poor is rich, because he's secretly rich. They'll come up with these convoluted rationalizations rather than just to accept the truth. I mean, so point being is you don't want to do any of that. When you have these beliefs, you need to find a way of being open to letting go of them to adopt more accurate beliefs that actually support you. And so some of these maybe kind of require some inner work to untangle. Others you can probably take off easier. As you can imagine, the ones that people hold on to more, sometimes it's because they've invested a lot of resources. Others it's because they have this distant past or recurring thing. Maybe their dad told them every week and yelled at them about it, or it was their pastor. And so that's something that's going to take effort and a lot of time to unwind. You can't just unpack that easily. So it's like my example with, sometimes people will be a little negative or distant to me or cold, and I'll think badly about it. That's going to take a little bit of more time to unpack because it took a while to build that belief. So maybe, some small rejections when I was a kid. And so it comes back to realizing that I am enough. I'm accepted. People value me. I'm a friend to people now, and it's not going to be completely unwritten and rewritten overnight. So think about that. Think about what holds you back in your fitness journey, in your money or career journey. Maybe, for example, someone told you you were always going to be fat growing up. And that belief on some subconscious level, maybe not even a conscious level, maybe consciously, if anyone were to ask you that, you would be like, yeah, of course, I don't think I'll always be fat. I think if I put in the work, I can be fit and jacked as well. But on a subconscious level, sometimes we still have those beliefs because there's different brain regions that address different parts of us. Our subconscious brain region is like a giant iceberg. And then our conscious brain is just the tip of that iceberg. And so our conscious brain is actually the most recent evolutionary development of our brain system. And hence, it is, while we can control it, it is still not the strongest. Our reptilian unconscious brain system is still very much in control. It's automatic, it's complex, it's something beyond our conscious interpretation sometimes, and hence, it's hard to unprogram that. When we face a fight or flight response, for example, let's say a tiger was right in front of us, all of a sudden our conscious mind goes away and, our unconscious reptilian brain kicks in. We either fight, freeze, or fight or run. And so that is the level of emotional and deep inner work that's oftentimes really holding us back. And so I just wanted to touch on this topic because I don't think it's truly addressed by at least most mainstream people in the major personal development pillars: health, wealth, love, and happiness. And, sometimes they'll give you tactics. Do these ab exercises, eat this, fit these macronutrients in each of these pillars. And there's influencers who do this and they do well. They have ebooks and courses. And my theory is that that's probably only working for those people who are already good to go emotionally and they don't have to do any of the deep inner work. And so the tactics work. And yet there's a lot of us who are still floundering, struggling. And yeah, sometimes it's just because we still haven't got the right information. It's not because we need inner work. There's a lot of crap courses online and bad advice. So some of it is just sifting through the crap and getting actual good tips. But that the other half of it is actually like, yeah, some of us have these inner emotional things that are what's holding us back. So thanks for listening. I think I could ramble about this longer, but that really covers it for the most part. As you can tell, it does take a lot. There's certain practices you can do to work on your inner child, your self-esteem, or whatever has scarred or hurt or affected your inner child, your reptilian brain, and created those belief systems that are not producing effective results for you. And then from there, you can start to change And sometimes it requires that inner work before any of those tactics or tips others give you can actually see any tangible effects on the outer work. So just something to consider. And I'll see you in the next podcast episode. Oh yeah, check us out at dreamlifelab.org if you want more articles or content like this. And be sure to subscribe to our podcast. Leave us a rating and review. We really appreciate it. It really helps.